This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be a substitute for mental health services.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Financial Wellness are not affiliated. Did you want to go first?
Our mental well-being is directly linked with our financial well-being. We can bring some normalizing and even some humor to these situations. You know, we're both from New Orleans. We like to bring a little fun to the table.
Yeah. It becomes empowering and it becomes something that you control versus something that controls you.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Steph. It's good to see you again. How you doing?
Yeah, good to see everyone. I'm doing well. How about y'all?
Doing fantastic. Doing fantastic.
I'm so excited about this morning. Get our guest this morning, and I was hoping that you would be able to provide us with a very lovely introduction because we are very fortunate to have our guest this morning.
So the exciting thing about what we're doing is that we're getting to invite people who are close to us, right?
I know, I love
We had a
that.
great conversation with our friend Bo last month, and this month we're actually inviting someone to speak with us who I've known for a pretty long time. You know, my 53 years walking this earth, I've known this guest for 52 of those 53 years. So our guest today is actually my cousin, Tara Sims. Tara is an award-winning administrative leader. She's a best-selling author, and she's the visionary founder of Evolved Assistant. She currently serves as a regional administrative manager at a leading global real estate management firm where she's supporting C-suite executives, and she leads a team of administrative professionals. She has over 2 decades of experience in executive support, and she's become a powerful advocate for elevating the role of administrative professionals. She's the author of Evolved Assistant, Unlocking Success in a New Era for Administrative Professionals, which I saw is also an Amazon #1 bestseller. So we're really excited to dive into that conversation. Tara's work, her writing, her speaking engagements continue to inspire a new generation of administrative professionals to evolve with intention, confidence, and purpose. And I would like to welcome Tara to our podcast today.
Well, good morning.
Welcome. Basically, we could summarize that as she's just a badass.
Well, you know, I've been called many things, but first of all, let me acknowledge that Chad decided to share with the world how old I was. Who gave him permission to do that?
You know what? That was a slip. That was a slip. That's my bad.
It's all good. All good. I'm excited to be here with you all today. So looking forward to our conversation.
So, you know what's interesting, what really struck me about reading your bio, particularly the part about inspiring administrative professionals. Stephanie, one of the things that Tara and I did for the first time since we were children was travel together this summer.
Oh,
And
right.
this past summer, we were in Greece. Tara came out and joined us for a week. And one of the most fascinating things that came out of that trip, aside from her doing, you know, the dress picture in Santorini, you know, the flowy dress picture, but there was a group of Greek administrative professionals who heard about Tara, knew she was going to be in town, and invited her to dinner. So Tara, how did that all transpire?
The way it happened was this particular individual, I was actually speaking on, it was Administrative Professionals Day, which is in April every year. And I was speaking on a virtual event for IAAP, which is the International Association for Administrative Professionals. And they had a live chat going, right? And so I saw these people chiming in from where they were from. And this individual indicated that she was in Athens. And so I went on LinkedIn and I sent her a note and I said, "Hey, I was on the virtual call, saw that you were there as well, and indicated that you were from Athens, and I am planning a trip to Greece, and would love to connect." And I thought when I said that we would connect and talk in advance, I had no idea that she would then say to me that she is one of the leaders on a professional development organization that's specifically for administrative professionals in Greece. And so she was like, "We'd love to take you out to dinner." I thought I was just going to have a virtual conversation with her. Um, and so she's like, "We'd love to take you out to dinner." I was like, "Okay." So it was really nice to be able to have dinner with them and connect with them and get the perspective of what's happening in the world of administrative professionals in Greece. And funny enough, this last year, I opened up my calendar so that I could have conversations with assistants all across the country so that I could have a little bit better, sort of widen my view and perspective of what's going on outside of my immediate circle of administrative professionals that I know. And so it was nice to add the ladies in Greece to that conversation and understand their perspectives as well. So it was really interesting to be able to do that.
That's amazing. I love that you were just like excited to reach out to someone and then it turned into this amazing like networking, yes, but also like time to connect with other people who are experiencing similar but also maybe different kinds of I don't know, work experiences, things like
Mhm,
that. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
mhm.
that.
I remember after the dinner, Tara and I came back, or she came back from the dinner, and we were talking, and you were talking about the different experiences that administrative professionals encounter in
Mhm,
Greece, and bringing in the cultural differences and things like that as well. So that was fascinating to me.
mhm, mhm.
Absolutely.
So Tara, talk a little bit about how did you get to this point? I mean, obviously now you are connecting with people around the country and around the world. Talk a little bit about your career and how you've gotten to where you are today.
So from a career standpoint, I started my career in college recruitment. So when I graduated from college, I spent, I don't know, close to a decade or maybe right at a decade as a college recruiter. But I knew that ultimately it was not where I wanted to land long term. I had no aspirations to become like a director of admissions. And so I took a little bit of a veer off the path because I decided that I wanted to go to beauty school, which was something that I had wanted to do for a long time. And I remember having a conversation with my grandmother, and she said to me, she goes, "Do not look up and reflect back on your life later on and think to yourself, I wish I would have." And so I decided to leave my job in recruiting. And at the time, in college recruitment, I was working in the evenings sometimes, sometimes on the weekends, and there was no way that I was going to be able to go to school and continue in with the schedule, the professional schedule that I had, right? And so, and by the way, at the time, I was a grown woman. I was an adult with grown woman responsibilities, a mortgage, bills, all the things. And so I was thinking like, what can I do? Where can I go and work where I can get like banker's hours, right? Because my intention was to go to school in the evening. So I quit my job. Because back then you could quit a job without having a job and find a job fairly quickly. I would not advise that for anyone in today's world. And so I quit my job and I took a job working at a bank, which happened to be directly across the street from the beauty school. And I imagine how lovely that was to
Wow.
be able to get an opportunity that it was. in close proximity to where I would be going to school. I literally could have walked. That's how close it was.
Wow.
And so I started as a receptionist, and very quickly they realized that I could do a lot more. And was asked to become the assistant to the executive vice president of the retail side of the bank. So she was responsible for leading all of the branches, all of the branch managers reported into her. And so, of course, I took that role, and it was obviously an increase in pay. And I thought, when I got in that position, mind you, I'm still going to beauty school at night. I thought to myself, I like this and I'm really good at it. And that initial position was, I think, really the spark for me to recognize that this is something that maybe I could continue to do. Now, I still thought I would go to beauty school, graduate, and start doing hair, but once I graduated, the bank actually got bought. So I lost my job. And at the time, I needed to find something again. And it was easy for me to look for something in an administrative role because I had been doing that, right? And then it also occurred to me at that time that I got grown woman responsibilities and bills. I don't know if I can go out here and try to build a clientele as a professional hairstylist, cosmetologist. And so I took a job at Kellogg and packed my bags and left Atlanta and moved to Michigan. I had a friend at the time who was an executive at Kellogg. She had lost her assistant and needed some help. And so I sort of abandoned the idea of becoming a full-time cosmetologist. And that taking that opportunity is what set me on the trajectory to continue as an administrative professional. And I've been doing it ever since.
That's amazing. So it's in that particular decision
Mhm,
of going to Michigan as opposed to opening a business
mhm,
was it sounds like it was so pivotal. I mean, obviously taking the job while you were in school and learning how talented you are in that area was also so pivotal, but it wasn't your plan to build this world.
mhm.
Now,
Yeah,
and on top of that too, I mean, you talk about now you have grown responsibilities and bills. How was that? How was that weighing on you at the time?
honestly, that was the thing that in some ways didn't really allow me to pursue what I initially thought I should pursue, which was becoming a cosmetologist, right? I had to make a decision that was based on the reality of my financial situation. You know, had I not had the limitations, I probably wouldn't have what I have today or be doing what I'm doing today. Now, I don't regret that. So I want to make that clear. I don't regret because I think what I've done and where I've landed from a career perspective and all the things that I've been able to accomplish, um, I do feel like I've made the right decision and I landed in the right place. But as I look back on that time, the decision to make this pivot to become a full-time administrative professional and pursue this as my career was really driven out of the financial circumstance I found myself in at that time.
Well, and it sounds like too that it was impacted by the message that you got from your grandmother about not looking back, not having regrets,
Mhm.
and all of that. So, can you talk a little bit about how any other earlier experiences, messages help kind of shape your um, financial beliefs?
So it's been a long journey, guys. Um, growing up, and I think this is probably pretty common for people in my generation, and I would even dare say the Black experience as well, that nobody talked to me about money. Like there was never a conversation where anyone sat down and talked to me about how to manage money, how to use money, all of the things that, I've learned over the years. And so my earliest memory of money was spending and with no guardrails. necessarily. And my mother was a shopper. She was extremely fashion forward. I had the kind of mom who would literally get up, she'd get dressed in the morning, she'd have a suit on, with a clutch bag and jewelry and all the things, right? And so I got to see that growing up, and it was like I thought my mother was just so like fashionable. I still wear some of her jewelry today, by the way. And so I never knew anything about this idea of like saving money or um, maybe even denying yourself some of the luxuries or shopping for the benefit of saving for your future. Those things weren't even in my brain. And so I spent a lot of time as a young person wearing lots of designer things and all the name brands and all of those kinds of things because um, that's what I saw.
You were pretty fashionable as a kid.
Thanks.
I I was a little bit jealous because I was not fashionable. But
Well,
but
and there's it seems like a kind of another pivot, so to speak, of spending was something that felt comfortable as far as like money was concerned. But then you made a decision not to pursue cosmetology because financially it wasn't necessarily viable at the time, or it didn't feel viable. It may have been. Um, and so where do you kind of see that pivot coming from? Or do you know kind of the origin of that?
Well, I mean, at that point as an adult in my 30s, first of all, I was in debt. So let's start there.
Yeah.
I had just purchased my first property a few years before I started, which obviously at the time was the largest amount of money I'd ever had to personally pay to live somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I am a single woman. I did that on my own, and it felt like a colossal sort of undertaking. And this idea that I just knew it wasn't going to be possible. I didn't have a husband or an additional income in my house. It was all on me to figure this out. And I was in debt, a lot of it at the time, right? And so I had to make a decision. And I think about those years like I had debt, but I also wasn't so moved by the fact that I had this debt. It over time that
Mhm.
started to sort of tick away at me like, girl, you have got to do something because this feels uncomfortable
Yeah.
to have this amount of debt. But at the time, I was, I guess, just in sort of survival mode and making choices that felt like something that I could manage and sustain at the time.
Yeah. And then what do you think as you kind of became more aware of the weight of that debt, what was that like?
Um, I can remember thinking to myself, how did I get myself in this circumstance?
Mm,
And it feeling extremely heavy to be so tight from a financial standpoint.
mhm,
And it's funny because there have been maybe once or twice before, this was years ago, that I got to a place where I actually paid off credit card debt and then got back into it.
mhm.
And so, which today I can say I don't think that'll ever happen again unless there's some sort of circumstance that requires that mandates that I have to use my credit cards for things.
Mhm.
But I just started to feel it felt like, and it's hard to put it into words, it just felt so stressful to me
Yeah.
to have the amount of debt that I had at the time. And I felt like heavy is
Mhm,
probably the best word to describe it.
Mhm.
mhm.
And then it just got worse. Like
Yeah.
it just got worse over time, right? And I felt so limited in some of the things that I wanted to purchase and do. And And it just got worse over time to the point where I was like, I gotta figure something out. Something's gotta happen, right? Um, because the weight just felt so heavy on me.
So what happened? Like what
Mm.
actual steps did you take to kind of break that cycle?
So I want to say this to your audience. This was not like a 2 year span, right? We're talking about a significant amount of time for all of this to transpire, right? I started thinking about, so if I think about coming out of beauty school, I graduated in 2008. Um, I started working at Kellogg in 2010, maybe somewhere in there, 2010. Around that time, I started to feel like, okay, this feels really tight. So when I took the job in Kellogg, it was one of the intention really was to try to pay some debt, right? Like, and again, time there was a lot of additional time. So when I came back from Michigan and started working at Comcast, I was still in that fight to try to figure out how do I get rid of this debt. And so years later, it really occurred to me was like, okay, girl, you got to figure out how to make some more money because there's no way to dig yourself out of this hole. We all know that the credit card hole is not something you dig out. You can get into it very quickly, but getting out of it is a whole different conversation. Um, and it takes years to do so, but I needed to make more money, you know? And so it took me and I'll tell the story about how I figured out how to do that. But that was sort of the thing. And I also started spending some time educating myself about money and finances. I think probably over the last 5 to 6 years, I've even gotten more sort of involved in understanding money and finances. Chad can attest to that because sometimes I'll text him and be like, guess what I learned today? Um, but what I decided to do was I just got still for a minute and I said to myself, like, how do I, at the time I was working for an executive who I had a really good relationship with. I was in a Fortune 30 company. I was supporting a president of the division at the time. And there was an opportunity that presented itself. We were getting a new building. We were going to require that we hire a facilities manager. And I decided that I was going to throw my name in the hat for that opportunity, which meant that I would be leaving my role as his assistant. Okay. Because I needed to figure out, I had reached the highest role you could have as an executive assistant. There was nowhere else for me to go in that job function. And so I thought, okay, well, I got to jump out of this to go do this other thing so that I can start to make some additional money. So long story short, I get the job. So I work as the facilities manager and also supporting him, right? For probably almost 6 months. And then he approaches me and says, well, he's like dragging his feet on hiring someone new. Okay. And so again, long story short on that, he eventually asked me to stay. And what I said to him was, I will stay as long as we can figure out how do I continue to develop professionally in this role, but also continue to earn more money. And so out of that situation, I was able to build a role for myself and move out of the executive assistant function and started managing a team of assistants and became the first manager of administrative services within the company. And so that set me, I think, on the trajectory of figuring out how do I dig myself out of this hole. That was sort of step one to how I did that was just to simply start to earn more money.
Well, the other piece I heard when you were talking about that is, and I find this particularly hard for women, and
Hmm.
I don't know if this is your experience, but you knew your worth
Hmm.
and you said, I'm gonna need more money.
Hmm.
I need
Period.
I need your financial piece to match the
Hmm.
worth.
Hmm.
And that is such a hard thing for younger women in particular women that I mentor and you know, was that your experience? Is that something that was easy for you?
So here's how you do that. I obviously had established myself with this person. as someone that he could trust, as someone who delivered quality work.
Mm-hmm.
We were partners in a lot of ways. So this wasn't just an ask that came after working with someone for a very short time and I had no justification or proof of
Right.
why I would be eligible to earn additional money. It's funny because in some ways I had to leave him in order for him to recognize that that he didn't want to lose me in the role that I was in. And so that made it a little bit easier that there was a relationship there, right? And I knew what I was bringing to the table because we had worked together for a long time. And that made the conversation much easier. I think the weight of my financial situation was such that I had to make a decision for myself. And I've always been one who realizes that I come first. And so I'm very cautious around not going for what it is that I think I deserve or for what I want or what I need because I'm worried about what someone else's perceptions or thoughts would be about me asking for those things. And that has always served me well.
Absolutely.
You know, what stands out to me too with all of this is that you knowing your worth and advocating for yourself
Mhm.
ended up creating a completely new position inside of this large company.
Mhm. It's true. And what's interesting is it's messaging that I share now as I am on the speaker circuit and I do lots of podcasts. And I just came back from EA Ignite, which is a large conference for administrative professionals where I was on the stage. It's a message that I share with that audience because assistants are, if you look at org charts, we're low on the org charts, and often don't recognize the value that we contribute, or at least don't know how to effectively communicate it to others. And so that is a through line in a lot of the things that I talk about when I'm talking to assistants is you have got to get clear about how the work that you do then enables an executive or a team to do their work, right? To move the business forward. It's something that I feel like I'm fortunate to have um, developed that skill and ability, and so I share it with assistants regularly, all the time.
So,
Yeah.
so kind of switching gears a little bit and moving forward, Tyra, you talked a lot about navigating your career, particularly as a single woman. You
Mhm.
talk uh, going forward, talk a little bit about um, financial concerns,
Mhm.
as a single woman entering or nearing now retirement years. Uh,
Yeah. It so one reason to get out of the debt was the stress attached to having all of this debt that was clearly more than I could afford to pay, right? Living beyond my means, right? The second issue that was also sort of weighing in the back of my mind is as a single woman, no husband, no kids, what does my future look like um financially, right? I don't know where I'm at 75 or 80, but what I do know is I am extremely concerned about making sure that no matter where I am at 75, 80, that financially I'm comfortable to be able to live and do the things that I want to do and have the things that I need in order to live comfortably. And so that, if I were to say, is one of the things that probably keeps me up at night. And it's been the fuel for me to continue my education around financial literacy and understanding what it looks like to in retirement, right? And I spent a lot of time, probably more than people know, consuming information about this. And I send Chad all kinds of things
yeah,
like,
yeah, you
should
do.
I do this? Is this right? Is this accurate? Because it is a real concern. And I tell my mom all the time, I was like, Mom, you have a me, right? My mother lives with me. Although she's a federal government retiree, so she'll get an income for the rest of her life, but I don't know what my future is going to look like. And it's got to be a concern for many other, I would think, single women with no kids, and there are a lot of us out here. And so that was the secondary thing. And over the last probably in the last year and a half, I left the last job that I had been at for 11 years. And part of the drive to do that was financially based, right? It was that next hump. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I was a manager of administrative services. I got promoted to a senior manager of administrative services, but because I spent all of this time not preparing for retirement, I am on the catch-up game. I'm in a race. I'm trying to make sure that I can catch up and get myself to a place where I am financially sound to retire in a way that I want to retire. And so I took the leap to apply for another job, got the other job, and in 1 year, increased my income by about $50,000 in 1 year. And in doing that, I've been able to significantly like try to do some catch up, right? And I think it is putting me on a plan to continue to grow in that way. Um it's something that I still worry about it. Now I do feel a little bit of a breather because I've been able to do a lot of things in this last year and over the last couple of years in terms of preparing from a saving standpoint, contributing even more than I've ever been able to contribute to my 401k. And so I'm seeing progress, right? Like I'm not as stressed as I used to be about it. I know that if something breaks in my house, I got the money. You know what I mean? It's things like that. And so I look back on it and I think to myself, girl, you have come a long way in this journey and in this process because I now feel a little bit better. I'm not there yet, although Chad says I'm doing okay. I'm still always looking for more ways to contribute, which is why I started my business. It's why I am, speaking. I get paid for a lot of these engagements. I do corporate speaking engagements, and all of those things are additional funds that I hope to continue to invest for my retirement.
Does that little girl who is so fashionable ever rear her head now that you have a little more money?
Steph, she's in there, and every now and then she pokes her head out and she's like, Girl, you need that $1,900 bag. I don't care what Chad said. Although I didn't buy it, but I will text him on occasion and be like, "Can I purchase the following item?" Um, so
Well,
yes, and it's a daily struggle, I will tell you. Like my carts on some of these websites are full.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a daily conversation with myself about, is this aligned with what you're trying to do in retirement? And it's hard
Yeah.
because shopping, I think for so many years was an addiction, and I did it blindly without a care about the financial consequences. And every now and then, I do a little something, but I am much more in tune with the fact that some of these things, and I had to get clear too about like I like nice things, but I also needed to get clear about, is this nice thing as important as what my life looks like when I'm older and ready to retire? And I've been talking to Chad a lot about retiring earlier than most.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think about that when I find myself thinking, okay, go purchase that bag or go, get that piece of jewelry. And so it's hard. I won't say it's easy. It's an everyday struggle because there's always something I could spend some money on.
Oh, yeah.
that's a good
And
point.
it sounds like you've really developed some strategies for yourself that have helped you to manage those, I guess, urges, so to speak,
It
maybe.
is. It's an
Yeah.
urge.
Yeah.
It's an addiction.
Yeah.
I think like anything else. It's an addiction like anything else. And I don't I just, and it's learned behavior. It's what I
Mhm.
saw. And so I just have to daily make decisions that are aligned with where I'm trying to go as opposed to sort of feeding that urge in the moment.
Yeah. Those early messages are so hardwired into our
Hmm.
system.
They
Mhm.
really are, but I think the stress of what I had gotten myself into, the hole that I had gotten myself into, I just never want to feel that again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't mean to use this word in a negative way or even a judgmental way, but it sounds like what you've really instilled is a level of discipline to
Hmm.
make those tough decisions and stick to them. And that's the biggest challenge, particularly when you're working with people and working through financial planning with folks, is maintaining a certain spending discipline where people can live under their means or live spend under what they're making. So that's been a huge accomplishment for you. And to the point about reaching out to me to see if you want to buy or if you can buy nice things. I think too sometimes you reach out to me hoping that I'll say no.
I do.
And when I say, "Oh yeah, you can do that," and it just throws a monkey wrench in your whole program. You're like, "Oh shoot, now I have to make this decision for myself."
That's exactly it. Because, I mean, again, I'm a single woman. Sometimes I need somebody else in the mix. And Chad is my financial planner, so he knows my circumstance. So who else am I gonna ask if I don't ask him? So like, I gotta ask somebody.
Well,
Well,
and to that point too, you talk about retiring early. One of the things that I've seen, um, particularly I've seen it with the women that I work with. Um, when I look at the numbers, right, when it comes time to make a decision on when it's time to retire, and I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at the expenses and the income and all the income sources, and I come back and say, "Oh, yes, you can retire, or if you choose to." The decision to pull the trigger and
Mm,
actually do it is it becomes a massive mountain to overcome.
yeah.
And not because the numbers look great, but it's, you're losing that income and you're losing
mhm.
what you've grown accustomed to and working and income and all these other things. And it becomes a new kind of stress to overcome.
I
Well, it
could see
also
that.
is identity. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Hmm.
I could see that. I could see getting to a point where I think to myself, do I really want to do this? Like I could see that.
Yeah.
The numbers, I know Chad would say like the numbers are the numbers, but I would be thinking to myself, but oh my God, what if this happens? Or like, what if that happens? And um, I still kind of feel like that. So
Hmm.
we'll see what happens, but I'm working on it. Let's just know I'm working on it daily.
Yeah. And I think the other piece, and I think I'm so glad that you're talking about, single women without any children, also in that demographic, because I think there are so many of us who
Hmm.
also never were taught anything about money, finances, how to manage money, those sorts of things. I mean, every podcast, Chad will say something, and I'm like, huh, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Exactly.
But the other part is money is something we were also taught not to talk about in many ways. And
True.
so to have someone to talk to and bounce ideas off of is so important because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. And so, yeah, texting chat, I mean, Chad is, Chad gets a lot of those texts probably from a lot of people.
It probably does.
Occasionally, yeah.
But I think the having those conversations with whoever is within your bubble
Yes.
is important. So
I
I'm glad you
also
brought
have a
that
good
up.
network of girlfriends who we talk, some of us talk about
Hmm.
money and things like that. I have a really good friend that works in She's an assistant as well, but she has worked in the finance space. I now work in the financial space too, so I've been able to also get additional information within the company that I work for. And so, yeah, I do have others, but when I start to talk about specifics around dollars and cents,
Mhm.
Chad's my go-to, whether he likes it or not.
I like it. And
Good.
sometimes drive me nuts, but I love it. So before we start the process of wrapping up this conversation, I did want to just touch on one thing because going
Mhm.
back to the spending and finding those purses and luxury things and
Mhm.
having the discipline to say no. One of the things that you mentioned when we had our prep conversation a couple of weeks ago was the quote that we all just found completely fascinating and something along the lines of just because I have it doesn't mean I can afford it.
Mm.
Talk a little bit about how that shapes you.
So here's how that came about. I was talking to one of my best friends. We've been friends since the seventh grade. And here's the funny thing about my circle is I have some friends who make pretty good money, more money than I do. And some of them love a luxury item as well, probably a little bit more than I. Like they are shoppers for sure. And so we were talking about luxury handbags specifically, and she said to me, "Girl, you can afford it. You can afford it, right?" And I said to her, I said, that was exactly what I said to her. Just because I have the money doesn't mean I can afford it. And we were talking about cars and things like that. I said, I want you to get very clear that if you come up to my house and you see a luxury vehicle sitting outside, it means that all the things that I need funded for retirement are in place. It also means that I am no longer in student loan debt. If you see, because I like those things, but not at the expense of what I'm planning for in the future. They're just not worth it to me, even though the desire to have them is great. Um, and so for me, I think about like, yeah, I could go buy a handbag. I mean, I don't know how much of a monkey wrench it would put in my retirement planning, but if I continue with that thinking, the more of that I do, then I find myself back in this situation where I'm leaning into those urges, and that is not in alignment with what I'm planning for my future. And so that's where it came from. Like, yeah, I got the money, but that doesn't mean I can afford it because what I'm trying to afford is coming later.
Yeah, that's so important.
Well, I
It's
hope
gonna,
we can get
it's,
that message out.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
So,
hmm
so before we let you go,
hmm
you get to be our guinea pig on a new segment on our show that
hmm
we like to call "Why Didn't They Teach Me This?"
Love it. This is a book, you guys. This is a book.
Oh, it
Yeah,
is.
I
A
believe it is.
little ebook. It's an ebook.
Yes.
That's a good point. Well,
I
we'll
asked,
talk about that later.
I feel
I'll
like I
take
say this.
10%. Thanks.
Yeah, we say this all the time. I think it's in our intro, actually. What?
Yeah.
I did this when I was younger. So before we let you go, if you could just share a couple things that you wish that you knew about money when you were younger.
The first thing would be to, and it's so interesting to reflect on these kinds of things, but what I wish I would have known was that saving just a little can have a huge impact long term. That's the first thing, because I was not a saver.
Mhm.
I couldn't keep money in that account for to save my life when I was a young person because it was burning a hole in my hand. I needed to go shopping. Okay. So to save a little, just a little, would make a difference now. To have done that, right? The other thing, I would say to my younger self is having that bag or purse or shoes or whatever it is does not feel as good as having money in the bank when you're 50. Okay? It just doesn't. And then I don't know, the third thing maybe I would tell myself is be careful just about blind spending, just trying to fill your life with all of these things. Because that urge, and I learned this too, right? Like you sometimes I have buyer's remorse. I have buyer's remorse a lot, actually. When I spend a large amount of money and I buy something, um, it would have been great to have recognized that early on, because then maybe I would have made some different choices along the way. Um, But yeah, and by the way, I have a fair amount of young people around me in my circle. I have some work folks and some folks in my personal life that are younger people. These are the kinds of things I share with them, the things that nobody said to me, that just a little bit, if you just put a little bit away, and we're so fortunate and they're so fortunate now that there's so much information that we did not have access to or wasn't available or didn't exist when we were growing up about financial literacy and how to save and how to invest. And it is now attainable for a young person to be able to save and invest and do the things that we didn't even know was a possibility. I remember, and I'll wrap this up. I remember sitting in a class in high school where we had to learn, we had the newspaper. Remember when the stocks were in the newspaper? And they
Mhm.
taught us how to read that information, but but then no direction on what to do with it once we read it. Like, um, and it's so interesting how back then, because obviously I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. Oh, I went home and said, look, we learned how to read the stocks. My mom would have had no idea. My dad would have had no idea like what to do with that information, probably. And so today, young people have such a great opportunity to lean into and there's no excuse because it is everywhere. Um, Financial literacy information is everywhere. And so, yeah, those would be some of the things that I would tell my younger self if I could go back.
I
Well,
love that.
well, I appreciate you sharing that. Particularly the piece about saving, and I tell people
Mhm.
all the time and clients all the time, um, the discipline of saving can be frustrating,
Mhm.
particularly in the beginning when it's a relatively small dollar amount, right? And even if you're investing small amounts when you get started, and you see, even if you get a 10% return on a small investment, the actual dollar growth doesn't feel like it did very much. But for the folks who just stick with it and stick with it and stick with
Mhm.
it, eventually those small dollar amounts grow into bigger numbers. And then
Mhm.
that same 10% return gives you a much bigger number. So small
Mhm.
numbers grow into small numbers, big numbers grow into bigger numbers. Um, but the key is sticking with it. And it sounds like you've just done a remarkable job in sticking with things. So I
Let
want to
me
thank you. Oh,
I
were you
need to
about to
add
say
one
something?
more thing before we go. I just
Okay.
saw something on social media and I thought it was a really interesting concept. There was a girl who was talking about saving and not succumbing to all the consumerism around us and all the things, right? Like all the messages we get on social media to buy this and buy that. And she said she treats it like a competition between her and all of the things coming at us, right? And so when she makes a decision not to click on that thing to purchase it, and that money then shows up and she chooses to keep the money in the bank, she sees it as a competition between her and the money just continues to grow. I just thought that was an interesting way to think about it, right? When you don't make a choice, you win the competition between yourself and the consumerism that is on all the thing, the messages that we're receiving every day on social media. I thought that was an interesting concept and it's a thing. And I just saw this like last week. I was like, I'm going to start thinking about it in that way. When something comes across my feed, when David Yurman pops up on my feed to tell me to purchase a piece of jewelry, I'm going to say to it, nope, I win. And that money is going to remain in my savings account. So
And
just a little
and
tip.
and you'll cut out the middleman of calling me where I tell you, oh yeah, you can do it.
I love that. It's kind of
Yep.
I always think of marketing and advertising as like the popular kids. in middle school who try and dictate what you're going to wear or how you're going to be presenting yourself. And if you don't, they're going to bully you or whatever. So
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, I don't want to give in to the popular kids.
It's true. It's true. I like it. I like it.
Well, Tara, thank you for joining us today, and
You.
sharing your story and your expertise, and I think it's inspirational for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you for having
so
me. This has
much.
been great. Even when I talk about stuff like this, I feel so good. You don't often think about what you've done and accomplished until sometimes someone either brings it to your attention or you start talking about it. So this was a good conversation for me to take a moment with myself and say, good job, girl. You have done a
Yeah.
good job.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
joining us. Really appreciate it. It's so nice to get to know you.
Same.